Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. Today's guest is my youngest guest so far. She's 19, extremely mature 19, by the way. Her name's Sophia Fisher. She's actually the daughter of a good friend and former podcast guest, Vinny Fisher. He's a successful entrepreneur, really awesome dude, has taught me a lot personally about leadership. But his daughter Sophia is an anti-human trafficking advocate. She launched her second nonprofit in January of 2021. The Stop the Demand Project, a digital campaign dedicated to combating human trafficking through educational content. So that's right, at 19, she launched her second nonprofit for fighting human trafficking. So we talk about like what human trafficking is. Is it a bad problem? What are ways to possibly fix it, including legalizing sex work is something I proposed to her. We have difference of opinion on that, but I really enjoyed that part of the conversation. She's been featured on Breitbart, Right Side Media, just making a lot of impact at a young age. So I'm sure Vinny is very proud. I really enjoyed the conversation. I know she has a really bright future, and glad we were able to connect and discuss. And like always, if you enjoy these conversations, share with your friends, rate 5 stars on iTunes, and subscribe.
This is Openly Outspoken with Jeremy Adams, where differing opinions are not only accepted, they're encouraged.
All right, Sophia, we're live. Welcome. And you're actually my youngest guest today, I realize. So congrats on that.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So we have a mutual connection, Vinny Fisher. You're blood related to him, it appears. What's it like growing up with Vinny as a father?
That's a fantastic question, Jeremy. I really look up to my dad, a big role model. I plan on going to law school, and knowing him, he's a lawyer but doesn't practice anymore. Very strong in the entrepreneurial world. I really look up to him a lot. Having him as a father, he's definitely challenged me in a lot of areas. I would say I'm a big go-getter. I'm resilient, and I'm dedicated in all that I do. And having him as my dad, he's really taught me how to work hard and have that work ethic. And yeah, outside of even just family, I think we're good friends too, which is really, really nice.
Yeah, I think you can tell a lot about somebody based on their kids, right? Like I think I don't know if you've listened to my show too much before, but I'm pretty openly like libertarian. Like I'm not like a big Trump guy or anything. But I would say I've turned more conservative through lockdowns and all the bullshit that's going on lately. So I'm like becoming more conservative by the day, it appears. But Trump has I feel like pretty respectful kids too. I feel like they worked hard, and I'm like, you can talk a lot of shit about Trump, but Ivanka, she came out pretty well. It's really hard to talk shit about
Right.
Ivanka, and I just I think you can tell a lot about somebody, but based on how their kids come out. So that says a lot about Vinny, that you're just doing big things and you're working hard, and you're 19 years old. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
So you were born in 2002. Is that the math?
2001, so
Oh,
I'll be 20 this June.
oh, wow. Okay. Well, congrats. That's awesome. I was born in 1990.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome.
So we're 11 years apart. But so at what age did you start realizing you wanted to do something bigger than most kids
Hmm.
your age? Because I'm assuming that's been the case for a while, right?
Definitely. I think it's always manifested in different ways. And so as a kid, I was super passionate about I was very creative as a kid. And so during my middle school years, I remember distinctly starting this duct tape business. So there was this mission at our church, and we were trying to raise awareness and funds to give to children who didn't have food. And I, at a young age, decided to start a business and start selling duct tape. And I made a couple $100s as a young kid, and I donated it all. And I remember, at a young age, I really wanted to do something bigger than myself, right? And that started at a very young age. Like I said, my dad had a huge influence on that, both of my parents actually. And I was very creative, and it took root in different ways. And so it was the duct tape business for a long time. And then as I got into high school, I got really passionate about different political and social issues. I started working for a Senate campaign in 2018, and years later, I started speaking out and became a strong anti-trafficking advocate.
So share a little bit about your nonprofit and what you're doing now. Before you start that, what age did you start this, and then share about it? Because I think that's fascinating. You started really young. I feel like I started really young in business and stuff, and you actually maybe started a little bit younger than me. So congrats.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So prior to this business, I had another nonprofit that I launched in the beginning of Corona, so spring of last year. It was called the Voices of Reason. I was running that for a long time, a few months actually, and until the fall of this last year. I had a desire to start something else. Like I said, I had been passionate about, anti-human trafficking measures since high school, but I hadn't done more than speaking events and stuff of that sort. And so I decided to close down the other nonprofit, and just within the past few months, in January, I launched Stop the Demand Project. So we're fairly new. We've only been around for a few months, but it's been incredible to see the growth that we've had so far and how many people are truly rallying around this cause. I had the idea to start it in December of 2020, and then we fully launched in January, and our team is strong and, really dedicated to combating this.
Yeah, a good friend of mine was actually on the board of a human trafficking organization here in Central Florida too. So why is that? Because I feel like I'm pretty ignorant about what's going on, and a lot of people probably are. What about that topic specifically, are you so passionate about? Why trafficking?
It's a fantastic question. I don't believe that anyone deserves to be exploited. I hear a lot of people speaking out against slavery in the past and slavery that still goes on today, but I think a topic that gets swept under the rug is human trafficking. We don't hear about it. So I'm really passionate about this issue because it's happening in every single zip code in America. It's happening in every single country within the world. So because of that, the fact that people are being exploited on a daily basis, I need to do something about it in whatever capacity I can. If not now, when?
So what are the numbers? Before we started going live, you said there's some numbers that are pretty fascinating. Can you dive into those?
Yeah, so I would love to give some insight into what some numbers surrounding human trafficking. It's estimated, well, before I even get into the numbers, it's hard to even measure such an industry because it's happening behind closed doors. We have countless organizations and groups differ in how many people are trapped, how much money the industry is generating, but they've been able to get a few good guesses on how much it's actually generating. It's illegal profits. It's hard to understand, but they guess that the entire industry generates over $150 billion annually. That's crazy. So breaking that down, human trafficking specifically, what does that mean? So that can encompass forced labor, that can be sexual exploitation, that can be organ harvesting, and things of that sort. And then within those categories, you have breakdowns. With forced labor, you have domestic servitude and child soldiers. And those specific categories that I broke down, the main ones, those three categories, organ harvesting, forced labor, and sexual exploitation, the one that generates the most money, which I'm sure that you would guess is sexual exploitation, the United States is the #1 country driving the demand for it. We have so much sex trafficking happening in the United States, and the average age a teen is sex trafficked here is 12 to 14 years old. Why so young? What are we not doing as a society to protect those youth? What I think is really interesting during coronavirus, there was a study done by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and they found that from January to September of 2020, compared to that of the previous year, online child enticement reports increased by over 98%. And so what we're finding is that traffickers are finding new ways to exploit modern day technology because of the lack of societal structure. I think there was this common misconception that during coronavirus, human trafficking was going to decrease. I think we have this idea that human trafficking is always the white van, or it's always something at the strip club, or someone that's a stranger. Yes, that happens. But the majority of the time, someone is trafficked by someone that they know, someone familiar. I've met countless people and countless victims who told me that they were trafficked by a family member and someone that they knew and that they trusted. And so I think when it comes to human trafficking, those are the numbers that are most shocking, that it generates $150 billion, that you can be trafficked by a family member. Those are things we don't talk about. You don't hear about that. That's why I'm passionate about it. People are being exploited. We don't hear about it enough, and there need to be more people fighting it.
Why do you think it's not? Because I have the friend that I referred to a few minutes ago. She's very, very passionate about it too, and like I didn't really hear about it even except through her. Like, why do you think? Because it obviously seems like a rather big deal, especially with the like how sensitive everybody is to how everybody is treated with like verbal stuff nowadays. Like, you think this would be a bigger discussion? Why do you think it's not a bigger discussion? I feel like it, people like you are starting to make it a bigger discussion, but it's still not as mainstream as it probably should be.
The reason people don't talk about it is because it's uncomfortable. People don't want to face the reality that this exists, because if they acknowledge the existence of human trafficking and start looking into it for themselves, that means that they're going to have to do something about it, or it's just going to live in the back of their mind knowing that they aren't doing anything about it. I'm not saying everyone has to be this huge advocate, but there's a role that every person can play. Now with social media, we have a huge platform and multiple platforms that we can use to speak out about this issue. If it's true, which it is, that it's happening in every single zip code, everyone can play a role in their communities with this.
So break this down, and I like, you can be as kind of explicit as you want to be and what you're comfortable with, but like, how does it typically happen? There's like say this like 12 to 14 year old teen, like it's a parent, a family friend or something. Like, where do they find the customer? Like, how does the transaction like happen? Like, where, and is this market exist online? Is it like word of mouth? Like, where is this stuff happening?
That's a great question. It's tough because it looks different every time, but there are definitely trends and things that occur most. Like I said earlier, a lot of friends or people that I know have been trafficked by somebody familiar, and that's most of the time what happens. So it's somebody familiar. And so how does that occur? A lot of times it's a slow process, right? It begins with grooming. And a lot of times the trafficker exploits vulnerabilities in victims. Vulnerabilities can look different, right? The stat I mentioned earlier, the average age someone's trafficked is 12 to 14. So we know that traffickers are targeting those who are young and naive right off the bat. And so if they're young and naive, then they're susceptible to more things. And so that being said, and having that young age, a lot of these kids nowadays with technology are using Instagram, they're using Facebook, in addition to inside the home and people that they are in close relations with. They also have social media access. And like I said, during coronavirus, we have seen that skyrocket in those enticement reports. And I believe the number is 1 in 5 children will be sexually solicited online, which is crazy to think about. And so I think that's where a lot of it is. It's in social media, it's inside the home. What's crazy is a lot of it can happen and you could still know the person, because human trafficking doesn't require relocation. To give a more specific example to answer your question, I have a good friend who was trafficked by her dad. And that looked like having her sold to people in her area or people in a different state. And so sometimes it did require relocation. And so his base specifically for the consumer, whether that was on, there are plenty of sites that have been used in the past. I know Backpage is one. I know Pornhub continues to be a site that actually fuels this issue. And I know plenty of survivors who've talked about their videos resurfacing on sites such as Pornhub. So what's happening is that a lot of these networks aren't always in the same place. It can be strip clubs. It could be people that they know that are just interested in having sex. It looks different every time, which is the scary part too, because I think what we want to be told is, here's what's happening, here's what we can do to fight it, but it doesn't look the same every time, and that's the tough part.
Yeah, no, that's awful. So the friend that you were just referring to, that her dad, like, because again, I'm just super ignorant to how this works. So the dad basically, obviously not the best dad. There's a way for him to earn money with people he knows, and like, how does the transaction happen? He's like, he somehow finds out that people he knows like want to like be sexually involved somehow with underage girls, and then like this, how did, like, I guess, like, how is then that underage girl like convinced to participate and go along? Are there drugs involved? Is, like, I mean, I guess because 12 to 14 like is young, but it's still old enough where you know something is deeply wrong. Like, how does, and again, just me coming from ignorance because I don't know a lot about it, like, how do you go from A to Z? Like, how does that happen, I guess? Like,
As for the consumer or the person being exploited?
both, I guess. But like, for your friend specifically that you brought up, like, how does she go along with it? Like, is there something in place where she can't escape, or that? I know every case is different, but that case specifically, how does that happen?
For her specifically, well, I would best describe it as a trauma bond. Traffickers target vulnerabilities, and since it was her family member too, there were so many ties keeping that. And I think a lot of people ask that question, well, why didn't you just leave? Well, you could physically escape, maybe for some people, but they don't leave sometimes because of trauma bonds and because of feeling like they can't, in the cycle of abuse and manipulation. If traffickers are targeting those vulnerabilities, which can look different in each person, maybe they're promising them love, or maybe they're promising them money, or maybe they are saying, hey, like, I will hurt your family if you don't comply. And so a lot of times they feel trapped. So even if they can physically get out, they feel threatened or they're coerced, because human trafficking involves force, fraud, or coercion. And a lot of times they feel helpless and they can't escape.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. Similar to maybe just like a bad, unhealthy romantic relationship. There's like all the reasons you should leave, but in most cases the women won't leave, even if they're being physically or verbally abused.
A lot of times too, with that, if it's been going on for a long time, it's all they've known for so long. So even though it's this awful cycle of abuse, it's all they know and are comfortable with, in a sense, because they haven't experienced anything else. And so that cycle of abuse continues to happen.
Yeah. So what is your nonprofit doing to help solve this?
Yeah, Stop the Demand Project, we launched in January, as I said earlier. We are looking to meet Gen Z, right? We know that the average age a teen in America is trafficked is 12 to 14. We're looking to meet Gen Z on social media, and during coronavirus, social media usage increased. And I know that over 90% of Gen Z is on social media. So what we're trying to do at Stop the Demand is meet them where they're at, which is social media. We want to build a hub for resources, and we want to create educational content talking about human trafficking so people can understand the full scope of this. What I'm finding, especially in my research and trying to understand this, there's so much out there on it, still some uncertainty, again, because it's so large and there's so much we don't know. But most people aren't going to pull up the Global Slavery Index. Most people aren't going to pull up the Trafficking in Persons report and read that couple 100-page document. What we're looking to do is sift through that ourselves, have our team do that, and actually produce content that people can understand based off of that factual data.
Okay. So are you you said to start off, just in the few months since you launched this new project, you've already been, making some good impact. You just, based on that, I'm assuming you're just connecting with that target vulnerable demo and sharing good resources and helping.
Yeah, so since January, since we launched, the way that we measure our engagement is through social media. So in the past few months, we've been able to reach over 500,000 people, I know, on Instagram alone. And so that's been incredible to see and super encouraging for our team to continue doing what we're doing. We've been utilizing all those social platforms to create conversation, to talk about what's happening, to provide stats, but then, like you said, to give them those resources. As of right now, we have 3 partners under this umbrella of human trafficking, and there's a couple of different areas. One of our partners focuses on survivor aftercare. I know one focuses on actually extricating these victims, and the other one provides resources to law enforcement. So yes, we talk about these stats surrounding human trafficking, but we also encourage our audience and those that are on board with us to talk about what are the ways that people can get involved with their resources. So we're building that hub of credibility. We're bringing all those organizations that we're partnered with together so that when people come to our page, we can say, hey, there's mentoring available here. Or, hey, did you know about this organization that's providing resources to law enforcement? So we're not just talking about stats. We're giving a platform to other organizations, promoting the work that they're doing and helping them find volunteers.
Yeah. So are young women reaching out to you saying that they saw your content and it was helpful to them? And like, are you getting good insight from your target demo?
Definitely. We've been receiving tons of comments, a lot of hate, a lot of people that are not in support of it. I don't know why you would be for human trafficking. It's a sad thing, but there's been a lot of people who've expressed just comments such as, I had no idea this existed, and now I want to do something. And then we've been able to give them resources. I haven't come into contact with a ton of victims, and I'm not sure they would explicitly say they were a victim. Yeah. Even if they were, but I have peace and knowing that putting that content out there, and we are linking our page to our other partner 1211 that focuses on the mentoring and housing and focusing on that survival aftercare aspect. I know that we're giving resources to people that have been victims of trafficking, as well as those who have no idea what it is but are looking to learn more. And yeah, it's been very receptive on social media, and it's encouraging because if that's our goal and we're seeing people respond and say, hey, yes, I am actually learning, I had no idea this existed, then that's a win for us.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. What do people say? Like, obviously on social media, just a group of people are always going to be haters, but what are these haters saying? Like, what are they anti that you're doing? Just out of curiosity, like, what's most common that you hear?
Yeah, I remember I did a video talking about how large this industry is, as the stat I pointed out earlier, at generating over $150 billion. I'll see stuff such as, that's something I want to be a part of, or increase the supply, meaning the people that are trafficked. And it's a little disheartening to see all of that, because the reason I'm putting it out there is to encourage people and to get them involved and to be in understanding of what's happening, not having this desire to actually be a part of what's going on. But there's always going to be people like that, so that can't be a deterrent for us to stop what we're doing. But it's disheartening when I see comments like that, and that's mostly what we'll get on the hate side of things.
Yeah, no, that's sad. That's kind of disgusting.
It really is.
So what are your goals with the nonprofit over the next few years?
Right now, we have an ambassador program, and we have about 20 people a part of that. What they work on doing is producing that content, the content for our pages. They work with our partners hand in hand, and then we also, the executive board, works with all the ambassadors to make sure we're getting content out about recent events, stats that have been coming out recently. I'm looking to grow that program more. I want more people to be involved. I want them to feel as if they have a voice and they can come and talk on our platform. In addition to growing the ambassador program, I would love to fully develop our website out. As I stated earlier, I would love to have a platform and a place where people don't feel overwhelmed. They can come and see information and easily digest it in the best way possible. It's still an overwhelming, uncomfortable subject, but what I foresee in the coming months is developing out a site where people can find ways to donate, to learn more about this, to get free training, all of that in one place. Our social media is great for that, and we have our link tree in our bio now, but as we continue to expand, that's what we're looking to do, to have that website where we host multiple organizations. At least I found when I was learning about human trafficking, I was overwhelmed and I didn't know where to start. I think that we could be the place for that, the place people go to learn about what human trafficking is and how to get involved, and we link them to the places to do that.
Yeah. Are you self-funding this all right now? Or are you raising money for it?
So it's all self-funded right now. We are hoping to start fundraising in a few months, but yes, it's all self-funded by me right now.
So is there anywhere that I could personally donate to this?
That would be incredible. We are going to be setting up our bank account in a few weeks. So if you want to wait and hold off to that, if not, I can always transfer it into the account later. But whatever you are most comfortable with,
Okay.
and I can make sure that gets there.
Yeah, I'm happy to make a small financial donation myself. Just let me know when the bank account's ready to go, and I'll make a donation.
I
Uh,
appreciate that.
yeah, for sure. So what? Just out of curiosity, what? So you're about to be 20.
Yep.
So, what do you envision, like, 30-year-old Sophia? Like, if you can, like, when you're 30, you'll be like, this is what I want to be doing when I'm 30.
First off, my goal in front of me right now is to go to law school and graduate. As for where I'll be when I'm 30, I'm not too sure yet. I definitely see myself having a career in politics and being an advocate about these social issues. I have a very strong stance on abortion. I'm very outspoken about human trafficking. And so I foresee that I will continue to go down that path. I don't know how or where I'll exactly end up with that. Who knows what the nonprofit will be at that time. I hope that it'll continue to grow. I think that we have a solid team and a really good vision, so I'm hoping that will flourish. So maybe I'll be working on that then. I would love that. But I definitely see myself being an outspoken advocate, and I think going to law school and having a deeper understanding of the law will allow me to have more change in the realm of human trafficking. And maybe that looks like drafting legislation, and I'm working at the state level. I've thought about a lot of things, but to answer your question, I'm not sure where I'm going to end up yet. But I know that I'm passionate about anti-trafficking advocacy, and wherever that ends up, I'll be content.
Yeah, no, and that's okay. I still, when I was your age, I knew I wanted to be in business, and I just told myself, I'm like, I want to be in business, I want to be wealthy, and I still am in business, and still kind of like don't know exactly what I think I'm like super, super passionate about, but I'm getting more clear and more clear by the day, I feel like. So sometimes it just takes a lot of time to figure that shit out. Why do you think conservatives, because that's when I reached out to you initially, because I knew or saw you were at CPAC, which is down here in Orlando. Why do you think the trafficking issue is something that conservatives seem to talk more about, but I don't really see much of it coming from the left? Why do you think conservatives are passionate about that issue?
I think conservatives are really passionate about this issue. Well, first off, to talk about the differences between the left and the right. And from my experience in working with nonprofits and learning more about this issue, I found that the left does care about it and the right does as well. We just have different ways on how we want to combat that. For example, the left and the right might have different views on prostitution. Some people want to decriminalize it, some don't. And so we have differing opinions on how to combat it, but I think the sides are in agreement that it's a bad thing. I think the left and the right understand, yes, it's modern day slavery, this is bad, but the reason there's a disconnect with conservatives and liberals is that because we don't see eye to eye on how to solve the issue all the time. Not on all issues. Prostitution was just one example, but yeah, that's what I've noticed.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I just like blanketed, like the left doesn't seem to be talking about. Obviously, I'm sure a lot of good-hearted people on the left and right are anti-human trafficking, just to be clear. I'm not saying like they just don't give a shit about the issue at all, but I feel like more conservatives are vocal about it. Like I hear it as more of an issue that comes up. Like, so this is where I am a little more libertarian, as I and one of my friend that that is involved in human trafficking here in Central Florida does not agree with me at all, and that's okay. But wouldn't legalizing sex work potentially lower the need and like lower like the need for human trafficking if there was a regulated, legalized place for people to, like, obviously they'd have to be of age and age of consent and stuff like that. So I don't know if it would fix like really young, nasty stuff, but wouldn't legalizing sex work like actually help with the human trafficking issue if there was a legal place where the women were protected to like whatever these men want?
That's definitely the argument that I'm hearing, which a lot of people are posing that, hey, if we decriminalize this industry, those who are trafficked and those in prostitution will be able to have a safer environment and we're going to be able to detect those who are victims. However, I would take the opposite stance and say, well, I've looked at some studies and found that in countries where prostitution has been legalized, they found that the demand for those trafficked has also increased. When assessing prostitution as a whole, most women don't want to be there. Over 80% of them have experienced rape, sexual abuse, and things of that sort. Most people in prostitution don't want to be there. So we're going to be decriminalizing an area where people are exploited time and time again, and women have expressed, and through countless research studies, we found that this is a cycle of abuse within itself. If people want to conduct themselves in that manner, you can't always stop them, right? And the law is not always going to stop them. But it would be a shame to decriminalize something that we know is causing a cycle of abuse and potentially going to increase the demand for those trafficked. That's where I would land on the issue. But again, like you said, there's an argument to be made for both.
Yeah, I look at sex work laws and drug laws are very complicated because I think we both can agree laws really don't do much to prevent it. Like, laws don't seem to be the solution. Like drug use rates and like consumption of cocaine and opioids and things like that are like at an all-time high in the US, and we have a war against drugs. Like, obviously the war against drugs is a failure, to say the least, and that's how I kind of look at sex work too. It's not decriminalizing it isn't necessarily saying, hey, like, everybody should just hire prostitutes, and like, I still think we can like educate people about certain things, but it's just, if there was a place for women, like this business is going to happen whether we make it legal or illegal. It's going to happen till the end of human civilization. So we can, protect these women, give them health care, have security guards in case things get out of hand. I mean, really, really, not that it would, prevent bad things from happening. It couldn't be perfect, but I feel like it has to be better than what's going on now, which is just like a black market of this. So what you're talking about is the trafficking portion, which is more involuntary, but there's obviously a huge business of just voluntary stuff as well. So that's more of what I was referring to, is there is a demand from these men. And are you a Jordan Peterson fan?
I am, yes.
So have you heard him talk about incels?
No, I haven't.
So you would like this then. You should look into this, because I would just challenge. Jordan Peterson's theory is there's like 10% of men out there, involuntary celibates, that's what incels stand for, that just can't get laid. This 10% of men, they're just like the lowest of the food chain in regards to they're not attractive, they lack confidence, they're just weird, they're just creeps. They just can't, that 10%, no matter what. And I feel like girls can sense these guys too. They can just look at them and be like, there's no chance in a million years I would have any interest in this guy, right? So there's 10% rough, that's his, estimate, what I seem to agree with. Which, by the way, there's a lot of correlation between like serial killers and mass shooters and them being incels, by the way. Bill Maher talks about that a lot. But these men that are just like frustrated, they build up this resentment towards women. There's a demand of these men. I think that society would be, I know we're getting down a rabbit hole here, I think society would be like a happier place if this 10% of men had an outlet to get their like biological needs met, and that's one of the reasons why I'm for this sort of thing too. Like, I'm not trafficking, obviously, but legalizing sex work is. I feel like I was one of those men in high school. I was one of those 10%, and then I gained a little bit of confidence and like got okay in business and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, maybe I'm out of the 10% now, but that's my theory. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, let me ask you, what do you think is fueling that?
I think as are you a religious person?
Yes, I am. I'm Christian.
Okay. So I grew up I would say I grew up Christian. I'm more like in that
Okay.
agnostic spiritual ish realm right now. On a biological level, humans are here to stay alive and to reproduce, right?
Yep.
And if men specifically, I can't speak for women, but I can tell you if a man goes years without connection from women, attention from women, um, a lot of resentment can be built, a lot of anger, frustration. Like, they're not serving their biological purpose on this planet to just have that connection with the opposite sex, right? And I think at their just core biological level, that's why I'm for sex work. Is just, hey, like, there's like, protect the women. If the men get out of hand, like, they still need to, they can't just like abuse women and stuff. But
That's interesting, though. I agree with you that I think at its core, we are sexual beings, right? We're made to be in relationship with other people. And so if someone goes without that for a long time, that desire is going to increase a lot of the time. However, my question to you is why advocate for a cycle of abuse and prostitution as that outlet for their fix?
um, it's not that I advocate for prostitution. By the way, these are great questions because I'm glad we're talking about this because this is one of my things to talk about because this
I love
is,
it. Yeah.
yeah, it's not that I'm an advocate. Like, I don't have any shirts that say like, hashtag prostitution. I'm not going to be like rallying in the street, or maybe I would, but it's just like that's an option. That is an outlet because that's where my like, I think it's the most American thing we can believe is like, hey, what's a good fit for you may not be a good fit for me, may not be a good fit for that person. Like, if it's going to make this person happier, reduce stress, reduce that resentment being built. I mean, imagine a lifetime of, and this is a large chunk of men in society, and this is why Jordan Peterson like focuses on this issue a lifetime of being called a creep or women not taking seriously, going into 20s, 30s, and 40s, like never really having like a, a sexual partner that like, you didn't pay for, or, like stuff like that. Like, a lot of resentment can be built for these men. And there's one part of it to say, and Jordan Peterson talks about this too, there's things in your life you can do to be a more desirable man, of course. But that's unfortunately just not how humans work. I mean, like, I like talked about it on a couple episodes. Like, we can say, hey, a lot of less people will die of COVID if we just focus on our health, but that's not how humans work. We just want a vaccine. We don't want to like, a lot of us like exercise and eating healthier. No, that's stupid. I just want a vaccine, right? Like, I feel like it's unrealistic expectation. Humans just want the easy fix, right? And
Isn't
that,
that the easy fix, though? Just saying, oh, because they're screwed up and because they've dealt with this, just prostitution should stay legalized. We can hand them
yeah,
over to that. Isn't that the same thing as just saying, as with your example about not eating health, taking the vaccine over choosing a healthier lifestyle? Isn't that a same parallel?
I'm saying it is. That's my point. Is humans subconsciously just want, or even just vocally, just want the easy solution. I just don't. Unfortunately, that's just how humans are wired. We're here to reproduce and be safe, and we want the easy solution for shit. Like, that's just human DNA. How can I like get rich quick schemes? There's a reason that they're so successful, and still to this day they do really well. Like, humans want the immediate gratification. So, I I am one to believe, if done properly and the women were protected, legalizing sex work, not, and I, or, decriminalizing, legalizing. I want to be very clear. not like promoting it and rallying in the streets. And I'm thinking like we should celebrate, like everybody like hire a prostitute. Like that's not what I'm promoting per se. But if it's like, if it's a fit for this, this guy that is frustrated and like lonely and feeling resentment and hate, like
To take that out on an exploited women, that's
not
that's kind of
exploited
what
women. This is voluntary. The woman, this is.
most people that are in prostitution don't want to be there.
But it happens. It's gonna happen. Like the business goes on, whether like it's legal or not. Is more of my point. So, and I don't know that most of them don't want to be there. Maybe that is the case. I don't know the data on that. But if they're, again, very American viewpoint, if both parties are consenting to make this decision, it's, waivers can be signed, security can be there, like tests can be taken to make sure things are safe. I mean, we can make this safe, right? I think it would actually help tremendously with trafficking, at least on the sex exploitation side.
I hear that. Let me ask you this, though. This will be my last question to you. But a lot of times, victims of human trafficking nowadays are charged with prostitution. They're charged with the crimes of their trafficker, and they aren't seen as a victim. Being in prostitution, those trafficking victims, if someone were to have a prostitute now or think that they were paying for sex from a prostitute, what do you do when these trafficking victims are caught in that cycle? To go along with what you were saying of this business, if both parties are consenting to what's happening, well, what if they don't know on the other end the person isn't consenting and it's a part of a business deal? Then what?
Well, so legalizing prostitution, and again, I'm not a prostitution expert, but from what I understand, like countries like Australia, from what I understand, is prostitution is legalized, and a lot of other countries too. Not the U.S., of course, except in Nevada, outside of Las Vegas.
Right.
But there's, different types of prostitution, I suppose. There's like in a brothel, which is like a designated space with security, with, I'm sure, forms are signed, money is collected on the front end. Like there's people there to protect the women. There's that, which I think that is more of what I'm most open to, is like, hey, let's just create a safe space. The like legalizing it to just like people can still do whatever they want and kind of like behind closed doors, which is kind of, I think, what you're saying, which it still is a little bit gray, and it's almost like creating like some immunity to these people that are like paying for these services that then they wouldn't have criminal charges pressed against. That's kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, so I'm saying a lot of times these trafficking victims are weaved into this. And a lot of times trafficking victims can then go into a lifestyle of what looks like prostitution, but they've been in the life for so long. And that's how a lot of them end up there, because of a cycle of abuse or because of a history of trafficking, and they end up staying there. So that goes back to my point earlier of a lot of these victims aren't always there voluntarily. And even with the ones that might be, the data that's out there goes to show that majority of women have experienced abuse and rape and things of that sort with prostitution as a whole. And so that's what scares me from wanting to decriminalize it. I think we agree on a lot of things. We want there to be safe sex. We don't want women to be exploited. We just might disagree on how that's achieved. And there are studies that say both. And so it's not that you're incorrect or I'm incorrect. There are studies that will actually have backed up both opinions.
For sure. And I guess where my viewpoint really stems from is just like, America at our core level, founded on individual choices and freedoms. And it's like, hey, I think we're kind of like have a very skewed gray version of what freedom is. It's like, that's kind of where that's why I'm like for legalization of drugs too. It's like, you can do certain things that are classified as freedom, but like I look at it as all the same, like opening your business, wearing a mask if you want to, practicing prostitution if you want to, using drugs with your friends if you want to. I view that all as kind of the same thing, as like an individual choice. And as long as it is not like infringing on other people's, which is again where it gets kind of gray. But
Yep.
anyway, yeah, I just view it as like, and that's why I'm, you talked about abortion. That's why I do, like, I don't know if it would be the best choice for me if I had, that situation, but that's where I lean on the side of pro-choice. It's just that personal choice. But I do want to ask you too, what's it like? I saw you were at CPAC. It's very popular for young women around your age to be more left leaning, right? So you seem to identify more conservative. What's it like being a young conservative in 2021?
It's challenging. We live in this era and this time of cancel culture. So being the outspoken advocate that I am on social media, I get a lot of backlash, especially on campus. Being that young 19-year-old conservative that I am, I get a lot of hate. I used to be involved with a few political organizations on campus that were right-leaning, and the hate that would get was just crazy. People coming up to you and just not even voicing their opinions, but just absolutely spewing awful rhetoric. I think it's funny because a lot of times the left champions, and I'm not going to make a hasty generalization and paint the whole left as evil. I know a lot of people do, but I'm not going to do that. I think that there's a lot of good people on the left. But what I've noticed is there's this trend that they'll say, we preach love and tolerance, but if you don't agree with us, then you're ousted and we're going to cancel you. That's what I found. I wouldn't say I've been canceled on some large level. I know some people have experienced that, and I've been lucky enough to not have had that. However, I get major pushback, and I've lost a lot of people in my life who I thought were my friends because of my political views, and that's not friendship. Like we're doing now, we disagreed on something, and we had a healthy dialogue, and it was fruitful, and we went back and forth. But I don't think our society knows that. I don't think they understand true civility. I've seen a lot of intolerant people on the right, and I've seen a lot of intolerant people on the left. Personally, I am someone who believes in hearing both sides out. That also helps too because I would say I'm more moderate. I'm right-leaning, but I'm not super far right, and so that helps with me seeing the other side. But as a whole, being a conservative and going to these events are super nice. I can find other people that I agree with, and that's great too. But I also enjoy, being on my college campus and having conversations with people who disagree with me. And I think that's good, not to always stay in that box. But like you said and asked, CPAC was a great event. I had a good time, and I think being cooped up for so long in the house with Corona, it was good to get out and meet with other conservatives.
Totally. And like I mentioned a little bit ago, I feel like I've really been identifying more conservative lately, just because like the lockdowns and the COVID stuff. I'm like, we're gonna just shut down the whole world, and just because of like this virus that we know who the vulnerable crowd is, like it's like a joke, and we still are going on. Fortunately, you saw in Florida, we're like normal. So I'm so grateful to live in Florida. I can't speak for what's going on. Do you live in Ohio?
I do. I live in Ohio. Our governor acted very quickly when this happened, and he was one of the first to act. And I think that saved us a lot of time. And we've been fortunate enough to, we didn't completely shut down, and we can go and eat in restaurants. I'm pretty sure the statewide mask mandate is still in place. The vaccine is getting rolled out now, so it's not as bad as a lot of these other blue states, such as New York and California. But yeah, compared to Florida, you guys are very open, and I think, a model to the rest of the states on how, COVID should be handled. I think DeSantis did a fantastic job.
A model to the rest of the world, potentially. If you look at case data, we've been open, like clubs and bars have been fully open since like the summer. And it's just like, if you look at case data, it's just really not much different, like proportionate to population. Yep. And it's wild. So what I was talking to my friend Brooke, who may actually be a great connection for you. She'll, by the time this episode airs, she will be the last week's episode. She's an openly gay Republican. She worked with the Florida Republican Party. She worked on Trump's campaign. But she said something similar to you, which I tend to agree with. And by the way, I have some I don't think I have any friends that are like super far left. I don't think I have any friends that are like super far right either. I tend to believe that like both extremes are like the same person. But she said people on the, because I talked to her about like she's identifies as Christian too. And I was like, how's the Republican Party and the Christian community react to you being like openly like lesbian? And she said like it definitely challenges, but I feel I'm being more and more accepted. And she said I'm a lot more accepted from the Christian and community for being open lesbian than I am accepted from the LGBT community on the left for being an open Republican. For being an open Republican, she said, like the LGBT community, who is very most commonly left leaning, is like very, very mean to her regularly. And she said girls won't even go on dates with her because she identifies as conservative.
That's crazy. I was talking to a friend the other day, and they just moved out to LA and super conservative, but they have to stay quiet about all that. Or what's going to happen? They're going to lose a lot of their connections potentially, and they're going to be canceled. And it sounds like the same thing. You have a different political alignment. She's more right-leaning. It sounds like she's Republican. But then when you get involved with people who, would consider themselves maybe Democrat or left-leaning, then you're canceled, or people won't go on dates with her. That's what I'm sick of in society. We need to come together. The polarization is so bad. I don't think it has to keep us separated. I think there are factors fueling it. I think the media is one of them. I don't think that helps a lot of times with a narrative being pushed out. And I think the media thrives off of this divisiveness. And then ultimately it produces this sensationalist news cycle. But that's definitely disheartening to hear. People should be able to express themselves and talk about what they believe politically without being told that they can't be a part of something in society. For her specifically, that community.
Yeah, totally. So would you ever marry like somebody really far left?
I have my non-negotiable list, but if someone was left-leaning, I would have no problem.
Not like left-leaning, but not like
very far left.
Not like an Amy Klobuchar center left, like a male version of an AOC, like something like that.
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't even marry someone that was crazy far right-leaning. I want someone sensible, moderate, someone that I could see eye to eye with, okay with having disagreements. But if we're that far separated, I can love them from a distance, but I don't think that marriage will be an option or dating or anything of that sort for me.
Yeah, I would agree. Somebody so far extreme, like, and I will say, because I get in a lot of conversations about all sorts of topics, just like that's why I have this podcast, but also with just like personal friends, and we agree a lot more than I think the media gives us credit for. And like, I don't know if you saw the clip that went viral from I think a day or two ago about what Charles Barkley said. Did you see that?
No, I didn't. Oh, yes, I did. I did see that, talking about how the left or the media wants
the left and the right to basically just be polarizing. And pretty much what Charles Barkley said is, I think most white people and black people, most Republicans and Democrats are really good people, and the media just wants us to be divided. And I truly agree with that, because I get in conversations with a lot of different people. I've had hundreds of conversations, people more right than me, people more left than me. And it's like, maybe a couple times at most, I'm trying to think, did we ever just like where we couldn't even have a conversation about it, and that we were just like so far off where it was just like I don't think the extremes are really that big. But the media, CNN wants to make it look like every Republican is like a KKK like Bible thumper, and then like Fox wants like every like Democrat to look like an unpatriotic flag burning like communist, right? But I just don't think that's the case for a vast majority of Americans. And I am hopeful that like cable news just kind of like washes away in general. Like, I think there's better sources for news.
I think you made a great point. Both parties are fueling this divisiveness. And I think for the media outlets, for certain, they thrive off of that. They get more views and clicks because of this sensationalist news cycle, as I said earlier. So for them, they're profiting off of it. But at the end of the day, it becomes the agenda to them is more important than upholding truth. and pushing out what's actually happening so people can make their own decision. A lot of times, I think with the news now, people want you to believe a certain thing and they're not giving you that room to think for yourself. And so that's what's dangerous. And like you said, CNN, Fox, a lot of times they're painting members of the opposite party as these evil people and choosing those stereotypes or picking on the same people and saying, yep, that's the entire party. And then they'll say, oh, well, they're being divisive, they're not helping, but ultimately they're just doing the same thing. But when you say most people that you've talked to personally firsthand, and I can attest to this as well, don't think like that in the sense that they're that extreme, and most people do love each other and don't want to be divided, yeah, I can get behind those statements. And I think we kind of have to disassociate from the media and what we're being told if we want to understand what people really think. The only way we're going to know that is by conversation. You get the opportunity all the time to talk to people on podcasts, but just imagine if all you heard was what the media put out about people. Well, you'd only believe that the left was XYZ, and same for the right. The only way we're going to get to know people in their heart is by getting to know them. So many people from talking to them have told me, oh my gosh, Sophia, like I'm so surprised, like you're conservative, but you've been the only nice one I've talked to, or the only one that they've talked to. And that really disheartened me, but I was encouraged, that was a nice compliment and all, but it made me realize something bigger, to which is what you're saying, is that people are so divided, they're not even talking to people on the other side, and they're just allowing their misconceptions to take root and allow that to be their viewpoint and how they view everyone else who says they're conservative, right? So I think it's really interesting nowadays with that, and how we are so quick to write off people before we even have a conversation. But like you said yourself, the only way to know that is through actual conversation.
Yeah. And if like whoever said this to you, they probably don't even talk to a lot of conservatives anyway. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's probably
not.
They just don't even talk to conservatives. You're like the only nice like conservatives and Democrats are both pretty nice. Like I don't think from my experience, your political affiliation doesn't it's just who you are. It makes you a nice person. Like I look at the money as the same thing. Like I don't think getting wealthy makes people shitty or nice or whatever. I think it's like who you are, and like maybe the money can magnify it at times, but like it's ultimately
totally
who
agree.
you are. So what do people say to you? Like what do like other like college kids say to you because of like your conservative viewpoints?
Yeah, so they will make fun of me, whether it's my physical appearance or say I don't know what I'm talking about. And what I have to do.
What do you mean your physical appearance? What do they say?
So they'll make fun of how I look. I know sometimes people have I know even just the other day, someone was making fun of my nose because they thought it was too big and stuff like that. But they're only making those attacks on my physical appearance because they don't have any sound political arguments left. I am all for talking to people that disagree with me, but I know when to engage and when not to engage. If someone's coming at me, attacking me in person or on social media, I know right off the bat that what I'm going to do is not fuel the fire by engaging in a conversation with them and saying anything mean back. What I will do is either not say anything at all or just be super kind. But if someone approaches me and they disagree and they're kind about it, I know right off the bat that they are going to treat me with respect and they're going to be kind, and ultimately it'll be a conversation full of civility. So when people say those things to me, I try to brush it off and be the bigger person. But it can get to you sometimes. So
yeah, no, sorry to hear that. And yeah, obviously, if anybody like making physical appearance references, they must be very sad and insecure in their own life to just like do something like that. Do you know who Tomi Lahren is?
I do.
Are you a fan of hers?
I want to say I'm a super big fan. I think that Tomi does a lot of good work, but in terms of rhetoric, I think it can be a little bit extreme sometimes, but I think she is a person that has strong convictions. I applaud her for speaking up about what she believes.
Yeah, so Tomi, I've kind of always felt the same way. Have you read her book? It's like a year or two old.
No, I'm familiar with it, but I haven't read it.
So my opinion on her changed after I read her book. So I'm a much bigger, like I have more respect for her now. And weirdly enough, after I read her book, a buddy of mine that did some business with her, and I can't remember exactly what happened, but they weren't on like the best terms. But he's like, "Hey, I have her cell phone if you just want to like reach out to her." So yeah, I got her cell. When it makes sense, I'm gonna reach out. I'm not gonna just like hit her up. just be like a fan, because then, she won't take anything I'm saying serious. But we own a couple of conservative e-commerce brands, so there could be some opportunity eventually. But anyway, the reason I'm bringing up Tommy is in her book, she gives a story about how she'll just be eating like at a restaurant and people will come up to her and have like thrown stuff on her and like yelled at her and like said really mean things. But she said there's certain cases, and she gave some examples that makes everything she does like worth it. And she gave an example. She said, because she lives in Nashville now, but she used to live in LA, and she said she was eating at a restaurant in LA, and a black mother with like two young daughters came up to her, and she said, honestly, like, as she was like telling the story in the book, she's like, I didn't think this was going to be good because of my experience. The black community hasn't been very nice to me. But she said the black mom came up and said, hey, like, I wanted to, let you know that I don't agree with anything you say politically, but I shared you as an example for both of my daughters of like how you should be brave and speak up for what you believe in.
Wow.
And so although she didn't agree at all politically, she said, you are the role model example I gave to both of my daughters for being like strong, young, brave women in society. And so like she said, like, things like that are what motivates me to keep speaking up. And how powerful is that? She can say, hey, I don't agree with you like on political stuff, but you are a strong, outspoken woman that I shared with my daughters that this is, you need to have confidence like her, basically. Like, so I thought, like, by the way, I highly recommend the book, especially you being more of a, right, moderate, conservative.
Yeah.
Tommy's very about like speaking your mind, and that's where I gained the respect for her. But I thought that was a good story, and I wish that we were able to do more of that as society, of just saying, hey, like, I don't agree with this, but I still think you're a good person. I still think that
Exactly.
we have some common stuff. I still think you mean well, right? I think all that's okay. And I feel like it is naturally happening, just maybe not getting as much recognition. I can't even talk. Getting as much recognition as it should be. But I do feel like more and more good conversations are happening in real life.
I think so too. I'm really excited now. This got me thinking about the Clubhouse app. I think it's good that people are actually taking the conversation to an audio, right? An audio sense, that they're not just typing everything out, that they're verbally speaking and they can hear each other. And it's not just all behind a screen to the point where you can't hear the person and you're interpreting text tone. So I'm excited to see new technology coming out like this, because I think a huge reason for a lot of the mean comments online and bullying is that people actually don't have the guts to say it to the person, and it's just so much easier to send it out. Not to say that it can't happen in person, but going back to the idea that dialogue is what will bring more people together, and I truly believe that. Apps such as Clubhouse and other technologies that allow people calling on the phone, right, to actually have conversation that's not just texting, I think is really helpful. I think if we become too reliant on texting or Twitter, it can get us in a bad hole, and we can misunderstand people and paint them in a bad light. And so I like that you brought that story up. I'll have to check her book out, and that's definitely inspiring. And I think she speaks for multiple people. We shouldn't just paint someone as awful just because they have different political alignments. I think she was able to see past that, and she said, you are someone that I want my daughters to look up to because you are strong and you're brave and you speak up and you're resilient, stuff like that. I think it was so cool she was able to see past that. And so I hope that as a society we become more like that woman who's able to see past just someone's differences, right, and actually see them as a kind person and someone who is strong and whatever characteristics they would have.
Totally. And yeah, I definitely read it and let me know what you think. Another quick point on the book that she says too, which made me gain, like, I just gained a lot of respect for her after this book. I don't know if you know her background, but she worked for Glenn Beck in The Blaze. That was like her first big thing before. Now she's with like Fox or whatever. But
Yep.
They essentially fired her from the Blaze for she's a very, very outspoken conservative. She's like a border hawk. She's a like there's no doubt about it, she's conservative, but she is pro-choice.
Yep.
They fired her for being openly pro-choice when she is in that she lost her job, and she gave examples of them trying to like ruin her career because of it. And I think that's crazy too. She's just like, I can't speak my mind or say what I want, and they're going to try to ruin my life because of it. Like, and she had the like bravery to just go through with it, even though she knew that was going to be the case. Like it's a really good book. Highly recommend it. This isn't like a Tommy Lauren promotion. I didn't plan to bring her up, but I thought it was good too.
That's great. I'm definitely gonna have to look into that. You speak highly of it, so I'll check that out for sure.
So one final question for you. It's cool that you're relatively, we both are, but especially you, like early in life, young. Like, what would you recommend to a fellow young person that wants to go after their dreams, whether it's for profit or non-profit, but it's just like lacking the confidence to do that? What would you, to any person, I guess, but especially a young person, what would you recommend or say to them?
If you want to speak up about something, and if you have something that you are passionate about, don't let somebody else stop you. People are always going to have their opinions. They're always going to tell you what they think. Someone will always tell you what you're doing right or what you're doing wrong. But at the end of the day, if it's something that you're passionate about and you want to speak up about, then don't let anyone else stop you. Be resilient. Speak up about it. Even if you're doing something that's right, you're still going to get hate and pushback. And so for you, whoever's listening or this advice, right? If the hate's what's going to stop you, it's always going to be there, whether you're doing something right or doing wrong. If you're passionate about it, continue to speak up. And there are people that, around you that will support you. If you have good family and good friends, there are those around you that will rally and support what you're doing. But not everyone's going to support you, and that's okay.
I like that. Is there, I guess I lied. Actual last question. Is there, if someone wanted to get involved and support what you're doing, and I know the nonprofit is newer, but if they wanted to get involved and support, and I'll have your social info like in the show notes and stuff, so we'll be able to connect that way. But is there any way to help?
Yeah, so in a few weeks, we will be setting up our link to accept donations to help fund the ambassador program and site. For the time being, we are looking to grow our social pages and continue to push the content that we're putting out. So if you are looking to get involved, I would highly recommend heading over to our socials. We're on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, TikTok. Check out our pages there. We have tons of great content and ways that you can specifically get involved. If you want to support our cause or even participate in training or volunteer for other organizations, all of our social pages will be able to direct you to that.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on, Sophia. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for having me, Jeremy.
Thank you for listening to Openly Outspoken with Jeremy Adams. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast player so you get updated when new episodes are live. If you enjoyed this episode, the best way to support is to leave a 5-star review and share the podcast with people in your life that you feel would benefit from these types of discussions. Visit openlyoutspoken.com for additional details on the show. Find out how to connect with Jeremy on social media and learn more information about Jeremy's personal and business life. We'll see you next time.